All right, we'll get started with our presentation today. Hello and very happy Steel Day to everyone joining us this day. My name is Larry Flynn. I'm the structural steel specialist for Central Florida for the American Institute of Steel Construction, AISC. I'm based in St. Petersburg, Florida on Tampa Bay. Steel Day is an annual celebration of the U.S. structural steel industry, highlighting the amazing building and bridge work being performed every day by domestic steel producers, fabricators, and erectors in collaboration with architects, engineers, general contractors, and building owners and developers. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's special Steel Day 2020 presentation, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University's Mori Hosseini Student Union, an architect's perspective. Located on the university's Daytona Beach campus, the Student Union is a recipient of AISC's 2020 IDEAS2 Award for excellence in building design using structural steel. The IDEAS2 Award is the highest such award bestowed upon a building project by the U.S. structural steel industry. And just prior to the start of this program today, I had the pleasure to present the IDEAS2 Awards to our speaker today and the project team members that were gathered virtually on a call to celebrate the award being receiving the IDEAS2 Award this year. Our judges for the awards competition this year compared the project to a bird about to take flight, a floating cloud-like structure, and you're about to learn why from the presenter today. Joe Totoni, FAIA, is a principal with Icon 5 Architects in New York. If you have questions for Joe, please submit them via the chat feature on your screen, the bottom of your screen, and Joe will try to answer those at the conclusion of his presentation. And then I'll conclude the program with a few announcements as well. So Joe, you're cleared for takeoff.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you, Larry, and thank you again to the American Institute of Steel Construction for this wonderful recognition and acknowledgement. The design and construction team are truly honored and grateful to you, to the jury, for singling out the Mori Hosseini Student Union building. Okay. And recognizing it. This award recognizes the building, but more importantly, it really recognizes all the people involved in making this happen. So we like to also thank and recognize, obviously, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University for having the vision, the fortitude, the guidance to make this happen. The design team, a very talented designers and engineers who brought their creativity and discipline to this vision, especially our structural engineers, Thornton Tomasetti, who helped us figure out how to make steel float. And our construction team led by Barton Malo for their skill, their craft, and their dedication every day in making the vision possible. It's not advancing. Give me a second. There we go. To know the inside of this building, we really kind of have to start a little bit at the beginning. And ever since man has been present on this earth, he's had the desire to want to soar above it and to leave it. And throughout history, there's countless narratives and stories and very imaginative inventions, thanks to Leonardo and others, of the avian pursuit of freedom. Now, the early 20th century gave us the technical tools and science to make us, wingless mammals, be able to take flight. And in 1925, Embry-Riddle was conceived as a school of flight, capitalizing on this new technology, on this new frontier, on this new industry. And today, it is a major university offering degree programs in applied science, in aviation, computer technology, business, engineering, cybersecurity, and space. But most importantly, its central mission and distinctive mission really is to teach the science, practice, and business of aviation and aerospace. So it really was our job, the design team's job, to somehow capture the essence of that distinctive mission in the architecture of the student union. The project commenced with the university conducting a national search and then an invited competition to find a team that could create and design a new student union building as a centerpiece for student life at the gateway entrance to its Daytona Beach campus. We were fortunate to win that competition, and throughout the design process, met with students, administrators, staff, and board members in a very inclusive and collaborative process. To capture the spirit of this very special place through all those meetings, we then began to imagine the new student union somehow as capturing the essence of flight, where the building's form and expression would be inspired by the gracefulness of birds in flight. This is a view of the site as one enters campus before the student union was built. And we imagine that on this site, the overall resulting appearance of whatever we put here should somehow begin to belie gravity and to float and to lift above the horizon. And we realized while thinking about that the way we would achieve that concept was through structural steel. Now, to give some further context to the project, the campus sits at the edge of the Daytona Beach International Airport. And from this part of the site, one could see rocket launches from Cape Canaveral to the south. So it was an important site for the student union building. One of the characteristics of campus life that we learned from students over and over again as we talked to them is how much they enjoyed gazing up at the sky to see the sky and the stars, walking around campus day and night. This gave them connection back to the discipline that they were studying. And so we decided to place in this project a 250-foot long glass roof down the middle of the building that would allow us to bring controlled daylight into the center of the student union and give students inside visual access to the sky that they love so much while socializing or studying. It was at this part, or at this point in the process, that structural engineering, fabrication and erection, and conceptual ideas started to become real. How do we begin to make all this something real? And the design team worked in multiple formats: AutoCAD, Rhino, Revit, Tekla, even hand-drawn sketches to simultaneously refine and develop the concept of the student union. Oftentimes, these ideas, like this one for the 250-foot arching spine beam that supported that glass roof, were initially conceived and developed between team members as hand drawings, just outlining quickly the design intent. Those sketches were then developed three-dimensionally during design, evaluating how all the component pieces would be put together in what ultimately ended up being a very complex structure, in this case, the structure of the roof, and how they would seamlessly appear to be integrated and promote the idea and delicacy of flight, the gracefulness of flight. And this was really a process of back and forth. While we imagined what we would like it to appear like, working with the structural engineer and thinking about the reality of the pieces often changed some of those expressions. So this meant no exposed plates, no exposed hangers, no exposed bolts. Every piece of exposed structural steel needed to tell the story of lightness and flight. And this is a view of inside the great lounge of the Student Union, looking out onto the campus green. It's a 4-story space that literally wraps and embraces you when you enter into the building. You could see the beginning of that glass roof with arching spine beam down the middle. It actually initiates outside above the entry plaza, continues in to the great lounge, and then into the center of the building, where it allows the sky to be the ceiling of the university library on the 4th floor. Structural steel tubes between that spine beam and the adjacent roof support that glass ceiling or that glass roof. Now, the exaggerated roof overhang gives the building its kind of lifting quality. It also provides deep shade for the building from the intense Floridian sun. The remainder of the building envelope, besides the roof, is actually glass. So to stabilize that overhanging roof from wind uplift and hurricane force winds, we wrapped the exterior of the building with a sloping structural arch on the outside, and connected from that arch structural trusses that went up to restrain that overhang. Those curving shaping arches were fabricated in sections in Pennsylvania and then shipped to Florida for assembly on site. The assembly of that arch and the strut creates a fanning wing-like expression with structural steel. So the result of all that coming together was we were able to restrain the roof, we were able to provide shade, and we were able to ultimately convey the mission of the university. The result, as seen in this photograph, is really a very dramatic skeletal expression of movement created out of structural steel that allows and reveals all of the student activity that's going on inside the student union. This is a view seen from a major pedestrian pathway on campus coming across from the residential precinct to the student union in the center of campus. Now, the student union happens to be bilaterally symmetrical, except for a 2-story, 900-person event center, which is on the east side of the building. Now, that elaborate hovering roof that looks like it's magically hovering there really is not hovering there. It's supported by a forest of very serious columns that are taking all of the forces from above and from each of the floors and translating it down to the foundations. All the warping, arching, sloping beams and plates that make those graceful forms on the outside of the building are concentrated into these single points at each of the columns and posts. Yet those robust steel pipes needed to also appear to be very delicate and to disappear over the floating slabs of each of the floors in order to convey that idea of lightness and flight. This is a view of inside the student union, the great lounge space. And you see in the foreground the horseshoe-shaped amphitheater seating that occurs on 2 of the floors above the 1st floor. So as students come into the student union, they're able to see people coming in and out, their fellow students, and they're able to be seen. This is an important factor in designing student unions. On each side of this great lounge space, there are a series of rooms that support it: group study spaces, career services, computer labs and classrooms, an e-gaming center, offices, the student government offices, clubs and organization offices. And like the exterior, the interior forms and shapes convey an the idea of aerodynamic movement also. while at the same time framing views of the beautiful campus beyond and providing a variety of seating types for both group work and collaboration, as well as individual scholarship. The interior curving forms and surfaces are also supported by curving structural steel. This is a view of the dining commons in the center of the building. And this is that same view, complete. The oval opening connects all three floors together. Architectural lighting is used to reinforce that aerodynamic movement in the space. Finally, exposed structural steel provided sort of an unexpected real intimacy to the union. This is an open casual reading area in the library. And it's fundamentally a transparent room that overlooks that airport, the Daytona International Airport. But the exposed structural steel that you see here gives it a sense of scale and a sense of intimate gathering. Similarly, on the exterior of the building, those low arching, sloping arching arches that are supporting those struts create implied exterior rooms where there's outside seating for dining, outside dining. I guess in the end, I can say that it was really the characteristics of structural steel to be able to twist and to bend and to arc and to warp, while at the same time transferring significant gravity and lateral forces, which allowed us to take the abstract idea of the concept of flight and lightness and make a very real physical structure that ultimately reflects the mission of this great university. So thank you all very much, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Fantastic, Joe. Thank you. That was quite a visual tour you took us on here. If folks want to use the chat feature, if you have any questions for Joe, please use the chat feature, and Joe will try to answer them. Joe, I just it's pretty amazing some of the things you were able to do here, like you mentioned with these to evoke such a light structure here when actually obviously it's very strong and needed to be supported. You know, how is the genesis of this start for you as a designer? And then are you talking with your engineer and the folks at Thornton Tomasetti, or saying, hey, this is what I have in mind, can we do this? Or how does that conversation start with you?
Well, the genesis of this particular project started, as I mentioned, in an invited competition. So in the very beginning, we were invited to come to the campus, take a look at the site. There was some information given to us about what they imagined, what the university imagined. It was not this specific. And then we presented back to them, actually to the board, 4 ideas about the way to handle the building, the way to handle it. This evolved. This was not one of those 4, but there were lots of characteristics that are present from the 4 that we had presented, and the one that they thought was the strongest. It was really from after we had won the commission, they allowed us time to speak with the students. And I think that's really where things began to congeal with us as the design team about what this thing could ultimately become. We formalized that before Thornton Tomasetti got deep into this. So I would say midway through schematic design is probably when we got Chris and his group involved. And it was still pretty fluid. But we kind of knew what it was going to be. But I can tell you, all of what we thought ended up evolving and changing because they started to climb on board and started to run real numbers.
Sure.
And things had to change.
That happened.
And they did.
Mhm. Great. And the can you talk a little bit about the collaborative effort with yourself and the contractor Barton Mallow and the fabrication team? I know there were Steel LLC was the principal fabricator, but a couple of other fabricators were involved in the
Mhm.
project.
Yeah, I showed that one image that of the guy walking up the sloped arch. That was Charlie, my partner, who was heavily involved in construction, visiting the site out in Pennsylvania. And yeah, there were, I don't remember if we hit 1,000 on the RFIs. And that it's not true that it would all be associated to structural steel, but there were many.
Right.
And I don't, they weren't really they were not silly RFIs. These were significant RFIs about the team wanting to achieve the best outcome, look. When I said, you know, no exposed hangers, no exposed bolts, I mean, there wasn't a mandate, but I think everybody understood what we were trying to achieve. And there were fabricators and installers, you know, through Barton Mallow that would say, hey, this isn't gonna look the way we think the design team intends it to look. Ask the question. And then lots of times we were able to do that from our offices, but a lot of times, you know, Charlie or others from our organization and from Chris and his organization would fly down to the site to see a site condition and to try to handle it. Most of it, though, was caught during shop drawings or answered during shop drawings.
Okay.
But there was lots of back and forth, that was collaboration of making it happen.
Sure. Saw a question about, you know, someone said beautiful project. How much did it cost and how long did it take for construction? I believe that was the question. Yeah.
The construction cost was $63 million. And gosh, I know I'm going to get the time wrong, but I'm going to say 18 months. Somebody around here flagged me if I got it wrong. But it was more than a year, but it was when you see it, you could imagine what it took to do it just in terms of time. It's 180,000 square feet also. So it's, you know, it's significant square footage.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the alignment, no visible bolts and things like that. This project, I know the judges all commented, you know, about the architecturally exposed structural steel. Obviously, this really, you can see the steel here, but as a specification, AESS being a specification for how the steel is treated um, for this project. Was that a work? How did that process go for you? It can be detailed, and can you comment about that?
Sure. We had that, and of course we had to fireproof it. So there was um, there was there was times where it wasn't clear if it had to be at that level and
Right.
what level.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, yes, lots of back and forth, lots of head banging about that between the construction team and the design team. But we resolved it. And honestly, you could understand why that would be, because it does take longer to erect things like this. When you are establishing, you're using structural steel and you want it to look like a piece of millwork, because that's what the design team is asking.
Mm-hmm.
And in some senses, you know, it's not terribly fair because it's not millwork.
Right.
You know, it weighs 200 pounds a linear foot or whatever it weighs. But we did get through that. But to be fair, it honestly, there were lots of making that. The one that comes to my mind is making that glass roof.
Mm-hmm.
Those steel struts that are supporting that, they were initially not aligned with the skylight system that was above it, and it was exposed structural steel, so it wasn't easy to like take it apart and move it. It was a big effort to do that where the things were not aligning. So
I think what you're saying there,
in my view, that's still collaboration, trying to
it
figure
is.
out how to make it happen.
Definitely is. And I think that is the key when you're specifying or looking at specifying or trying to decide what level of AESS to give to certain elements is really it's about the communication involved, and it does require back and forth a lot of times. These are architectural elements that are critical to your project, and it's a very complex project, obviously. So that's part of the game.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about fire protection. Did you use intumescent paint on the
Yes.
project?
Yeah, not every place, but the places where we had exposed structural steel and we were required to have a fire rating. Yes.
Okay. And, obviously, given the times we're in now with the COVID-19 virus issues and obviously schools, I don't know how closely you've been in touch with the folks at Embry-Riddle about this now, but, to me, this project, when you have steel and you have these great spaces available, that gives some flexibility and adaptability to the folks at the university to do some things if they need to because of distancing and so forth. Would you agree with that, or
No,
how
no, I have not visited there since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, um, it was highly used, meaning every square inch you could imagine had a body in it,
I'm sure.
certainly within 6 feet of each other. The advantage, I think, reflecting on it, is because it's so open and flexible because of the steel. They probably could disperse people if they are using this building. I suspect they probably are, and I don't know in what capacity they're regulating it. They probably could disperse people around, particularly the dining area, where you probably want people to be further apart from each other if you're not wearing masks or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm. Great. And I know Rodney Cruz with Embry-Riddle, not on the line here, but thanks for addressing that, Joe. And I do see a comment from Rodney Cruz with Embry-Riddle University saying he's so proud of Icon 5 and Barton Mallow and the entire team. Truly a project that has transformed our campus. So when you have a client that pleased with a project, I guess you've done something right, and quite an achievement there. So, yeah.
Right.
So thank you,
Now,
Rodney, for your comment. I don't see any other questions right now. I could go on and on about this project with you. There are just so many great things. The bending and rolling you mentioned here. A lot of folks don't realize what you can do with structural steel, that it can achieve these different radiuses and so forth here. Obviously, it allows you as an architect and a designer to really express your your goals and what you want to do with a project like this. Would you agree with that, or
oh, absolutely. I think it was pretty early on in the project when we knew the building would be at a level of expression like this,
uh-huh.
that we knew that it was going to be structural steel that was going to get us there.
Mhm.
Um, and um, we knew that we would be able to fundamentally do all of that. And, the way that to sort of simplify it, and this is really an oversimplification,
Sure.
it's really the roof, like a big shed or a big pavilion,
Mhm.
and then, which is the unusual part of it. And then inside, and this is really an oversimplification because it's not, but inside are all of the columns kind of holding it up, which I would say is more conventional.
Right.
But that is truly an oversimplification. But basically and so we knew to at least make that shroud on the outside, everything you see in this image and all the other images, that steel was going to get us there.
Mhm. I mentioned earlier on that the judges commented, and as you said, you were trying to evoke flight and taking flight, but that you said, rest assured, I think to me earlier, that this building was not going to fly away. And obviously it's in Daytona Beach and Florida with high winds and hurricane force winds and so forth. That had to be something that was paramount in your mind as well, that you were able to design for. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Both on the structural steel, but also on the glass curtain wall. Lots of considerations regarding that, because making an exposed steel glass building is not the first thing that you would imagine to do in a hurricane zone.
Right.
But it is the kind of thing that you would imagine as being the centerpiece that invokes flight.
Mhm. Mhm. Great. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking time
Great. Thank you for
to
having
talk
us.
with us today. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Congratulations on the project, and to the Embry-Riddle and the project team, entire project team on this project, and receiving the IDEAS 2020 IDEAS2 Award for Excellence in Building Design using Structural Steel. I hope our folks today got a lot out of your comments. I certainly did, and really good to see you again. And
Good to
thanks
see
for
you.
joining.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Steel Day.
Happy Steel Day.